Welcome back. At this point I have to make a decision. Either I trust in you remembering all the cross-references I have established in previous episodes, or I show you the comparisons again, albeit from the other side, so to speak. Although I know most of you probably watched this series from the beginning, I've chosen to repeat the comparisons whenever appropriate. Not only for the sake of bringing them to mind again, but also because I'm sure some of you just want to skip to your favorite songs on the soundtrack. And I think this is a lot less messy than putting a bunch of annotations and links in the videos. Another quick thing to mention is that many of the tracks have multiple names depending on the translation. I have been using the titles that my computer gave me when I first loaded the soundtracks from the disc, and I'll stick with them. Now that we've got all that out of the way, let's actually talk about the music. A lot has happened since we met with Don Corneo. I won't do a whole story recap, but let's just say it involves an exciting battle in the sewers, a train graveyard, scaling a giant pillar, genocide, and Eris getting herself captured by Shinra. So we plan to save her by either storming the Shinra HQ or choose the smart way by sneaking in through the side door and... Actually, you know what, let's storm in, this is ridiculous. The Shinra building is a vast structure in the middle of Midgar. Its size and bureaucratic complexity is fitting, as the tower is the seat of the de facto world government. It has 70 floors, with President Shinra residing at the very top. We don't have to get through every floor though. By elevator, or via the stairs, we go up to the 59th floor and then work our way up from there. We enter the Shinra building and get a new track. The melody is obviously taken from the Shinra theme. But here it's repeated almost to the point of being annoying. Take a look at the bars where the melody appears in Shinra Inc. and in this track. As you can see in Infiltrating Shinra Tower, it runs all the way through. This actually makes a lot of sense if you think about it. The melody here is not disrupted, but it keeps going for the whole song, which gives it a cyclical and slightly trapped feeling. We are surrounded by Shinra, in enemy territory, and everywhere we look, the Shinra Electric Power Company is just staring us in the face. As much as the constant repetition of the motif can get on your nerves, it conveys the right feeling for the situation. I already mentioned the similarities to Kashmir by Led Zeppelin, but there is another song that has many similarities to the Shinra motif. Listen to this part of the score from the 1987 film The Running Man, composed by Harold Faltermeyer. It's always difficult to create a continuous loop which manages to set the mood but doesn't get extremely annoying. This is especially true when the track itself is meant to make you feel claustrophobic and constricted. And I think Uematsu once again pulls it off. Infiltrating Shinra Tower sets the mood perfectly and really manages to keep us on the edge of our seats while we scale this technocratic monstrosity. This track is so f***ing awesome. Sorry for cursing, but man, I love this song. In a very weird way, this track has ruined all subsequent Final Fantasy games for me. Because every time I got to the first boss in the game, I was excited for the music, and although there are some great boss tracks in the other games, none of them come close to this one. Right out of the gate, it hits you with this amazing guitar riff that honestly belongs to a classic rock song. I'm reminded of Money for Nothing by Dire Straits, but I'm sure you guys will come up with a lot of riffs that sound way more similar than that one, but that's just my initial association. The first time we hear this track is when we fight the second boss of the game, Airbuster. But you know how certain things bring up specific images in your head? When I hear this part of the boss theme, I always think of the fight against the Demon's Gate. I had tremendous trouble against the boss when I was a kid, and he almost had me. Just before I lost my party against him, I summoned Odin and he dealt the finishing blow. This part of the music always reminds me of that moment. An epic confrontation, powerful summons, tense action. People who say turn-based combat is boring have clearly never played Final Fantasy VII. So, why does this part of the music make me, and possibly you, feel this way? Well, I think it's a combination of upward movement and what is known as call and response. As you can see, the melody steadily moves up, which is reminiscent of what I talked about with the regular battle music. It comes across like an uphill struggle. The call and response part is a bit more tricky. You can see and hear it immediately. The reason for its emotional impact has a lot to do with tradition, I think. Call and response patterns are something that we hear everywhere around us, in children's songs, religious hymns, or military music. It brings across a sense of belonging and camaraderie. I know I'm reading a lot into this small part of the track, but I think it's an important section, which really helps with the emotional impact of the song. It is also in this track that Uematsu's prog rock influences can be heard most prominently. Not only the overemphasis on several different keyboard melodies, but the whole track is full of melodies that require enormous skill to perform. The bass, the drums and the keyboard are all fast and complex, and they only gain in intensity as the track goes on. So far, when talking about alternative versions of songs, I've only ever mentioned Distant Worlds or tracks from spin-off games. But as many of you know, Uematsu had his own band called the Black Mages, and Still More Fighting is one of their staple songs. Near the top of the Shinra Tower we meet Hojo, the head of the science department. He unfortunately doesn't have a theme, though he really should, he's a great character. He does experiments on what he calls his subjects. One of them is Aerith, the other one is Red 13, a seemingly vicious wolf-like creature that Hojo intends to breed with Aerith. Yeah, I don't know how that's supposed to work either. Anyway, Red 13 may not be a vicious monster after all, but rather a wise and soft-spoken character with quite a bit of depth. And this fits in perfectly with this theme. The first thing we notice, especially in the rhythm section, are Native American influences. This makes sense because Red 13 has clear stylistic influences from that culture, and his home, the Cosmo Canyon, which we visit later in the game, is very clearly influenced by Native American culture. There are clear similarities between Red 13's theme and the track Cosmo Canyon, the most prominent of which is the aforementioned rhythm section. Additionally, the guitar and bass are nearly identical. one point there is a break in the track, and the bridge, as I would call it, shows the more mystical side of Red 13. These parts are also a bit more playful than the rest of the piece, and I think there is a reason for that too. It's only later in the game that we find out Red 13 is not only actually named Nanaki, but is also no more than 15 years old, which makes him a teenager. This may account for the more playful elements of the track. Interestingly, the track Great Warrior, which is linked to Red 13's or Nanaki's father Seito, does not share a lot with this track, but is almost entirely based on the melody from Cosmo Canyon. As with many other songs, I love how Red 13's theme prepares us for Cosmo Canyon without giving too much away. When we first arrive at the town, we recognize the more rhythmic parts of the arrangement, but the melody is new. Uematsu really knows how to walk the line between surprise and familiarity. In the end, what I really enjoy about this track is that it comes at the perfect time. Just when we find out that the creature we perceived as a beast or a monster actually turns out to be something quite different. And that was it for part 7. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for part 8.